Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Monday. Beautiful Monday, marvelous Monday, magical Monday, mythical Monday.
Murderous Monday.
With beautiful Brice and Morné, of course.
Hateless Monday.
Yeah, I think bodiless Monday. Headless Monday, bodiless Monday. So, well, today we've got Oliver Cromwell Monday, and I'll never forget. Many years ago, I actually watched a movie, and I was a little kid, and I remember we were I don't know, for some reason it was at the drive-in, right? And where I lived, there was no movie houses; there was only a drive-in. So I watched Oliver Cromwell, the movie, and let's say maybe 50 years ago. No, I don't even know. I mean, you're looking at grandma here, okay? So it was 50 odd years ago that I watched that movie. But for some reason, Oliver Cromwell has had he had such an impact on me in that movie. So it's very interesting to be actually looking at his stuff again. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. It's great to have you all here. And with our lovely favorite nerd, Brice. You see, she's even looking the part nowadays with her specs and everything. I should maybe wear mine as well.
I'm just giving in to nature. I'm in my 40s now. And like, I think you guys, we were last week when we were doing the Sophia code, and I was like, why are the words blurry when I was reading? And it's like, oh, because I have glasses.
But the thing is, with me, I'm back to front, right? So at this stage, everyone my age, literally everyone, I don't know anyone who's the same as me in terms of this. They can't see close, right? So they're farsighted. I'm the opposite. I read like this.
I mean, I have to I noticed something was wrong. I have astigmatism, which all RH negatives apparently do. It's because our eye shape. But I noticed it in my mid-20s because I was traveling so much, and all of a sudden I got to the airport and I could not read the signs for the gates and stuff. All of a sudden just could not see it anymore. Like overnight, it was blurry. So yeah, but even with up close, sometimes with astigmatism, with the light, when the ring light hits the paper, the words get a little blurry. So, it says RH negatives are free.
I can see close. I mean, far I can see, but I mean, I can't like read very far. But I mean, I can see exactly what's going on, But yeah, so I think it's good to when somebody is short-sighted and far-sighted, then at least we both have, because I think most of my friends and stuff are far-sighted now, so I'm short-sighted now, so we serve each other well. When one can't read the menu, the other one can. The one can read the menu, the other one can drive.
I remember when I was a little kid, I don't know if churches still do this, but when I was a little kid at the First Presbyterian Church, we would get programs for every service, and they would tell you the songs and the verses that were going to be read. And I remember sitting there watching all my mama and all my friends' mamas doing this with every Sunday. Like every one of them.
I refuse to.
Now I get it. I get it now. All of them. Trying to like see
exactly
what it said. Now I get it. I totally get it.
Oh, lovely. Hello, Jessica. Hello, JB rants again. Oh my goodness, are we ranting? We're always ranting about something, aren't we? Really good to see you girls in the chat. Hello, Lisa. Really good to see you all in the chat. And you said it's marvelous.
I am loving the comments in the comment section. I am so glad that you guys are enjoying covering these cases and the humor that we're finding in these cases, because all jokes aside, no pun intended there, that is what dispels the demon, is the fact that we're laughing at how, excuse my language, but how fucking ridiculous this is. I think it's easy.
Bodiless Monday. Mindless Monday.
Easy for us to make fun of this at this point, because surely when all this was happening in the time, it was quite traumatic, but we're so far removed from these stories that it's easy for us to find the humor and in the weirdness, like the creepiness of these stories. And I think that definitely gives gives us the upper hand, you know, when we're dealing with this group of psychopaths, because they don't know how to laugh. Have you ever tried to see a narcissist crack a joke? It's pathetic. They don't understand.
Yeah, they've generally got like, I mean, they can laugh, but they laugh like it's like not from the heart or this real belly laugh. It's generally laughing at someone else's expense, that type of thing. It's more like an evil laugh, right? And they definitely find delight in others not getting enjoyment out of life. That's for sure. So they'll probably laugh.
We're gonna find the humor in their oopsies and their escapades.
Well, we're finding the humor and all their heads and the bodies and things.
I know that we're calling. Well, I mean, last week, poor Henry IV ended up at a lot of estate sales and flea markets.
Exactly.
Oliver Cromwell had his head had a little bit of a different trek around the UK. And listen, if someone's going to steal my head after I die, I want it to go in the direction of Oliver Cromwell, not Henry IV. Because Oliver Cromwell, his head had some fun. Like, there were some fun places.
Exactly. Super duper. Okay, well, what do you have to us today, for us today, our favorite little nerd, Brice? Sarah's favorite nerd.
I'm a nosy bitch. I want to know the petty nonsense that these clowns got into. You know, we know that TV is a form of distraction and brainwashing, but when you don't have TV, this is the shenanigans people got into when they didn't have a TV. So I don't know what's better or worse. And I find it kind of interesting because next week, guys, I'm not going to be here next week because as the Americans, we have Thanksgiving next week, and I've got a lot of family stuff going on. So it's kind of interesting that Oliver Cromwell fell in the eve of the kickoff of the holiday seasons. And for Americans, this coming up week is the kickoff because Thanksgiving is a really big holiday here. And we're going to get to why that's kind of karmically comical, because this guy was the most boring nerd that you've ever met in your whole entire life. But we got to talk a little bit about who Oliver Cromwell was so we can understand the significance of his head. And not only, actually, Morné, will you go ahead and show a picture of the head on the stake? So not only, his head came with an accessory. There we go. His head came with a freaking accessory. Like Henry IV's, it was just the head. But if you got a hold of Cromwell's head, it came with a stake through it, which we're going to talk about why that happened. So who is Oliver Cromwell? We've got to speak of this dude, this guy. Although he's got pretty hair, I'm kind of envious of his long flowing hair. We're going to have to talk about who
it's silky, isn't it? It looks all silky.
It's all silky. Obviously, he was using some Pantene Pro V, right? Like, he was deconditioning that. It looks like he has the haircut that I tell Shanti off camera whenever I get my haircut, I always want Shanti's haircut because it flows so well. It looks like he had your haircut, Shanti. Anyway, Oliver Cromwell, just a brief background into who this guy was, how he got famous. He was not born super famous. He was born into a prominent family, but he could have gotten lost into the time of history if it wasn't for the fact that he basically declared war on the monarchy, but not in the good way, guys. Like, we're going to get into this. This is what we call the Trojan horse, which we know that the cabal has Trojan horses. I do believe, in my personal opinion, that Oliver Cromwell was a Trojan horse, that he was controlled opposition. Okay, but he's known as the King Killer. So we're going to get into this. He was born on the 25th of April, 1599. He died on the 3rd of September, 1658. He ruled as the Lord Protector of the UK from December 1653 until his death in 1658. So let's talk a little bit about, we're not going to get into the military history of the wars because come on, guys, that's boring. We're just going to talk about it. We're going to get enough juice to talk about his head. But if you are interested, I know there was a whole sect. I said this with Henry IV too. We did not get into the military history. There's a whole sect of history that's just basically military history. If you are interested in his military history with the English Civil War, you can find so much research on that. But I'm just going to kind of talk about him as a person, his rise to power, and then his death and what happened to get his head passed around. So all right. So he came from, his father was a man named Robert Cromwell, who was a local landowner in Huntingdon in Cambridgeshire. Now, what this meant for the Cromwell family, for the family that Oliver was born into, they were considered to be part of the gentry, which is part of the aristocratic caste, but they were like the lower end of the aristocratic caste. So this is what I mean, that his fate could have gone either way. He could have gotten lost to history, or he could have, what he did, made a name for himself. That's that lower gentry that he was born into. He is a descendant of Thomas Cromwell. So if you guys are up on your bloody, gory English history, let me tell you guys, the English and the French, no one has more bloodlust than the English and the French. I am both English and French, so I'm speaking about my ancestors here too. They could chop some heads off. And they could freaking disembowel people in a moment. I mean, I've often laughed at this. We talked about in this time in history, if I had lived, which I'm sure we were all there at some point, I would have much rather been a peasant. Let's just be real, because these aristocratic families were constantly like killing each other, right? The closer you were to the crown, the more your life was at stake, right? So this, and Thomas Cromwell himself, if he sounds familiar to you, he was a statesman, lawyer, and served as the chief minister to Henry VIII. Thomas Cromwell was executed for treason by beheading on Tower Hill on the 28th of July in 1540. You know, King Henry VIII is famous for his 6 wives, divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived, those 6 wives. And people often think about Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, who were both executed by Henry VIII. But Henry VIII also was, like Alexander the Great, as we spoke about, was also just chopping heads off of people that he felt were slightly a threat to him from the Plantagenet line, which was the line of Henry VIII's mother, which was on the throne before his father, Henry VII. And he was
but hang on Henry VIII, sorry, wasn't he also well known for having all sorts of weird diseases down there?
I don't know, but he might have, because he had a lot of mistress. So Henry VIII.
Yeah, I'm sure he was well known for having all sorts of diseases down there, and I think he was quite gross. In terms of that,
the thing is too, with Henry VIII, also had in common with a story we talked about last week with jousting. Henry VIII's longest running wife was Catherine of Aragon. He was married to his first wife for a very long time. She was the daughter of Ferdinand and Isabel. Very strong tie there to the bloodlines. He got hurt in a jousting accident right around meeting Anne Boleyn, and people believe that is when he turned like maniacal, because that's when everything shifted. And they think it's because his wound was not treated properly. So he, when you get sick, you don't feel good, it affects your brain. And that's when he really got, but he also had the pressure. And so Thomas Cromwell was basically one of Henry VIII's victims. Now, Thomas Cromwell was also behind Anne Boleyn. They ended up turning on each other, but he was kind of the one behind placing her as the Protestant, kind of influence over Henry, because it was because of her that Henry VIII pulled out of the Catholic Church and created the Church of England, which was the Anglican Church, which for us in the United States, that's the Episcopalian Church, which is like, and this is important, this does play into the story with Oliver Cromwell. So the Episcopalian Church, or the Church of England, the Anglican Church, we call it in the United States, we call it Catholic Light, because it's basically just like a Catholic Church without the Pope. For the most part, the monarch, so Queen Elizabeth, now King Charles, is the head of the Episcopalian Church, the Anglican Church, not the Pope. Okay, so this is going to get, so Anne Boleyn, with the support of Thomas Cromwell, because we have this huge Protestant Reformation happening, we spoke about that in France as well, is kind of pushing this, and Anne Boleyn is the one that kind of convinces Henry, since the Pope, interestingly enough, one of my boyfriend's descendants, he's tied to the royal family too, he's just learning all of this now, was one of the people that traveled to the Pope to try to get the Pope to annul Henry's marriage to Catherine of Aragon. My boyfriend is also a direct descendant of Thomas More, Sir Thomas More, who was also a victim of Henry VIII, who was also beheaded. And if you guys are super interested in this, there is a series, I think it's a Showtime series called The Tudors. A lot of really big names are in it. It's a really good series. It pretty much, for the most part, does follow the historical accuracy of what was going on, and it's brutal. They go through every single execution that was under the rule of Henry VIII. So with that being said, Oliver Cromwell's family does have ties, very close ties, to the court, the English royal court. Now, with that being said, Cromwell is not actually Oliver's real last name, because in history books talk about this. They used the name Cromwell for political purposes because of Thomas Cromwell, because there was notoriety behind that name. But Oliver is related to Thomas Cromwell through his great grandmother Catherine, who was Thomas's sister. So Cromwell, and if it's very clear in the history books that they took on the Cromwell name as a way to have political status. That is not their actual surname. So I just wanted I thought that was interesting. So the Cromwell family originally got wealthy by the act of the dissolution of the monasteries. Again, if you watch the Tudor series, they do go through this. And this was the legal procedure administered by Thomas Cromwell when he was the chief minister for Henry VIII, which disbanded the monastery, priories, convents, and friaries between 1536 and 1540. So basically, this act was created by Thomas Cromwell, who then was signed off by Henry VIII when they created the Church of England, which meant that that the English royal aristocratic families, military, got to go in and basically wreak havoc on these Catholic monasteries and take all of their wealth. So if there was any gold there, if there were any statues that were gold, they would confiscate that. And that's what got the Cromwell family wealthy. So they got wealthy through theft, basically. Now, I'm not a fan of the Catholics either, but as far as the human level, that was pretty shitty, what they did to these monasteries and these friars. They murdered the priests. I mean, priests were having to, if you go back and look at history of this time in the UK, they have a lot of these old houses have what they call hidey holes. If you've heard that term, this is where it comes from, where Catholic priests were actually taken into people's houses and hidden in these hidey holes in their houses, so that and the military would come in looking for Catholic regalia, and they would, the family would have to hide this stuff, including, it was kind of like what happened with a lot of the Jewish people in the Holocaust that were being hidden by German families. It was kind of the same idea. Along the same lines. And so a lot of the old houses still do have hidey holes in them, historically preserved houses in the UK where the Catholic priests. So this wasn't just the fact that they disbanded, the corporation of the Catholic Church in England and then just liquidates their funds. No, they went in and just basically slaughtered them and took the funds. So that's how they got wealthy. So that's already some pretty gnarly karma you're carrying. And I'm not saying that necessarily was Oliver's fault. You can't help the family you're born into. We all have shady shit in our past. We all have ancestors that are questionable in our past. Show me one person who doesn't, So
me.
me.
Pure as the driven snow, I tell you. Pure as the driven
snow. None of my ancestors ever did anything shady. No, come on. We're all this is why we can laugh about this. Oh, by the grace of God, go on.
If I have to start talking to you about my recent ancestors and their shenanigans that I recently found out. Well, hello.
Oh, we would be. I mean, that's what cracks me
up. Look at Alice. Alice was in school with me. Alice, how dare you sneak into the waiting room for the waiting room? Yeah, in no way is missing. Yeah, if anyone knows my shady past, she does.
Y'all, listen.
Hello, Alice. Nice to see you.
I have somebody. This is going to be that's going to come on my channel. She's like a genealogist. And she's about to open up her own channel, and she's doing research into one of my family lines that I don't know much about. And I've already found out that my great-great-grandfather from that line haunts some buildings. I've already found, listen, if you want to find some gossip, just do research on your grandma and your grandpa. Literally, Grandma probably had a lot of boyfriends. Like this is what's so in that sense, I have empathy for Oliver in that sense. Like it wasn't his fault that his great uncle Thomas decided to like steal some wealth from some friars. Like we all got this shit, right? We all got this in our families, right? But anyway, that's how they got rich, you know. And at that point, owning land too was a sign of, and it's still kind of a sign of wealth. But that was kind of where owning the land, where a lot of the gentry came from, is because they owned their own like towns, basically, right? Like that's kind of the feudal system. Like that's kind of how it was set up. So Oliver was the 5th of 10 children and the only son to live past infancy. And this is going to play into what I believe caused some of his stress that maybe caused him to react in the same way. Because at this point, us women, we had no rights. Like we didn't really get rights until recently. So he has all these sisters. Now, you have to understand, again, they're born into lower gentry. So the sisters do have some value because girls were used as pawns, right, to marry them off to help secure families, right? So these women could have gone either way. They could have been married off to someone below their status, or if he was lucky enough, he could marry his sisters off to someone above their status, which would have pulled the Cromwells back up a little bit into the gentry hierarchy. Now, I say this for Oliver because his father, at this point, it's his father's responsibility, but his father is going to pass away and it's going to fall on Oliver's shoulders. So I just want you guys to understand that this is very significant, that he becomes the only male heir. And so therefore, it's not just the fact that he's the only son carrying on the name, but he's actually responsible now for all of his sisters when this happens. So Oliver did not finish his higher education due to his father's passing in 1617 with 7 unmarried sisters and a widowed mother. He was now responsible for taking care of the family. He married a woman named Elizabeth on the 22nd of August, 1620. Oliver was a Puritan. Now, let's talk a little bit about this Puritan movement that's happening in England at this time. So for most of Oliver's younger life, he, from what I've read in my research, was not religious, right? He was, and I think a lot of people can relate to this. A lot of times people are just kind of grandfathered into their spiritual beliefs, but they don't, or their religious flavor, if you will, but they don't like what, the Catholics that go to church on Christmas and Easter, like those types of people. Like they're not basing their daily decisions on their religion. It's just something, and that seems to be most of Oliver's life, that he was just kind of a Puritan because that was the flavor of Protestantism that was around him. Now, the Puritans, I'm going to get a little bit into the Puritan faith, because the Puritan, if you are an American watching, you know fully well who the Puritans were. The Quakers, because according to the history they've taught us, a lot of our early colonists, especially in the Massachusetts area, you think of the Salem witch trials, were Puritans, okay? So who were Puritans? They took the Bible to an extreme. They were fundamentalists. They put the fun in fundamentalists. Not really. They were not fun. They were the least. Catholics are more fun than Puritans, right? They only wore black clothes because they thought that having color in their clothing was a disgrace to God. They did not celebrate any holidays whatsoever because it was an extreme view, because they didn't want to distract themselves from worshiping God. Okay, so this is the flavor of Puritanism. It's very dangerous. Anytime you go extreme in any religion, it gets very dangerous. Hence the Salem witch trials. Okay.
Well, it's not even. I mean, when you say dangerous, I really think it's really just covering up so much crap, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at the Mormon Church, for example, let's take the Mormon Church, for example.
Yeah.
And I mean, they went on their cover life. It's really beautiful and also holier than thou. Right. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, they form one of the 5 pillars of the Illuminati.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Yeah, and it's crazy. So it makes us wonder how long this has actually been going on, actually.
Well, we get an idea of this, right? Because it's like, it's, I think too, we say this, you know, it's kind of comical. It's like men who are so anti-homosexuality and are usually the ones hiding the secrets, right? And so
they're the ones that are probably doing it as we say in Afrikaans, hulle knyp die kat in die donker. Now that what is it? It means they like doing dodgy things in the dark. That's the only way I can.
So it's the Puritan faith in itself is it comes from Calvinism, and we spoke about Calvinism last week with Henry IV. But the basis of Calvinism is emphasized by personal experience with the salvation of Christ, which I think is definitely a positive thing, that no church, no priest can like give you that. You have to, that's kind of the basis of shadow work, right? Like you have to do it yourself. But then we start to get these extreme movements branching from that. And I've said this before, I think the Protestant movement started as a pretty good thing, but quickly got corrupted. We see that with the quote unquote truther movement. It started as a good thing and then quickly got corrupted with Trojan horses and controlled opposition. That's how I feel what's happening here too. So Puritans follow very strict moral discipline and purity as the correct form of Christian life. The movement started in the 16th century when many clergy refused to accept the form of worship and the church organized and forced by the state. So that's what I was saying again. So the Anglican Church or the Episcopalian Church, which is Episcopal is a Greek word that means runs by the bishops. That's what Episcopal means, runs by the bishops. The Puritan Church or the Presbyterian, I grew up Presbyterian, but not Puritan. So we see Presbyterian, listen, the people I went to church with, they could drink like the best of people and they didn't hide it. Like everybody's got bars in their houses. So they are definitely the original flavor of Presbyterian was not Puritan. The Calvinists were not, it was basically, they were very just, you have to do you. So Calvin's view that the Presbyterian basically means the view that the church should be run by elders. So that's the difference. If we're looking at the two words, Presbyterian and Episcopal, Episcopal means run by bishops, Presbyterian means run by elders. So people of the church run it, not the government. So this means that the individual congregations were accountable to God and not the state. So this is where so that's why I said it's very important to understand this, because this is the political, if we take religion out of it, this is the political issue, that the Church of England was run by the state. The bishops, the archbishops, were hired by the monarchy, which is the state, whereas the Presbyterian was run by the people and separate. Which for the Americans, again, I say this is very important because these were a lot of the original colonists in the United States. Our government, it says that the church and state have to be separate. This is where this comes from for the Americans, is this, that the churches cannot be, according to our Constitution. Now we know they're 501c3s. They are very much a part of the government. We know that but this is where the original concept came from before it got corrupted. Okay, so I just want to set that up. Now, this girl, Elizabeth, Oliver's baby mama, his wife, her father was a landowner in Essex and had ties to a lot of high-ranking Puritan gentry families. So a lot of people suspect that Oliver started to become fanatical in his beliefs because he started to have some issues, and we'll get into that, some like personal issues. And sometimes when people have their quote unquote come to Jesus moment, they get very religious. I think it's probably a combination of some things. I think, yes, maybe he did have some like depression issues and there was stuff going on and he found a lot of solace from his relationship with God. But I also think that there was a political motivation, because the family he moved into that brought him up a little bit in the gentry world were connected to the Puritan movements. Now, for the Americans, I'm going to tell you something super interesting. In 1634, Oliver actually petitioned to immigrate to the colonies, but he was not allowed to. Now, I've spoken about this with King James I as well, with the King James Bible, when I covered that. A lot of people think that the people just said, I'm going to go to America and that's that. I'm going to start a new life. No, if you were of upper gentry, you had to get approved by the monarchy to immigrate to the colonies. It was like immigration today, where you had to have, and he got denied. Sorry, England, I hate to say this to our English cousins, but thank God he got denied, because the tyrant that he turned. Listen, we already had the Salem witch trials. We didn't need any more shenanigans happening in the colonies, right? It was already hard enough trying to like set up establishments and its towns here for the European settlers. We didn't need any of his shenanigans coming into. We already got enough of our own shenanigans. He can stay in England. So I just thought that was so interesting, like how fate intervened, and that totally changed the course of Oliver's life and the history of Great Britain. Okay, because that one denial of him moving, and I'm sure the royalty was like, damn it, when it happened, because of what ends up happening. All right, so but before this happens, before the 1634 point, Oliver is in 1628 is elected to Parliament from the Huntingdonshire county. So again, just like we have in the United States, you have elected officials, governors, senators. So he became elected from his town to be in Parliament. So he's dabbling into politics at this point. Around this time, again, Oliver starts to battle depression. He also ends up getting into land disputes, which ends in him selling some land, which then lowers his gentry status. So he's got some things happening in his personal life, which seem kind of silly to us maybe today, because we know what depression is, we know what anxiety is, and the fact that he married up and then got bumped down again by having to sell land because of these disputes. So if you put yourself in his shoes, this is a lot of stress, and a lot of stress can definitely wreak havoc on the mind and the perception of reality. We know that for sure. This is when he becomes extremely religious. He believes that God saved him, but the UK was drowning in sin, and major reform was needed to save the people. Those are the scariest words. What is it? I know Reagan was questionable too, but what did Reagan say? The scariest sentence is, "Hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you."
Yep.
He believed.
You talking about Ronald Reagan?
Yeah, and he was, but just as dodgy as the rest. But
he was as dodgy as hell. Let me tell you, yeah. Ronald Reagan in 1984 was right there at the weapons. What was the weapons display in 1984? International weapons display, and guess what weapons were? Children. Yeah. Children that were weaponized, that were being sold to different countries. So please, Ronald Reagan, he would know that from his own disgusting shenanigans.
But that absolutely, what he said in that one sentence was true. "Hi, I'm from the government. I'm here to help you." Like, that's basically what we're seeing with Oliver Cromwell. He absolutely believes that England. So he's now projecting. Talk about projection. He's projecting all of his stress onto everyone else. And so everyone else is fine, dude. Like, everyone else is totally fine. They don't care. The peasants are milking their cows. They're just glad not to be getting their heads chopped off. You know, like, the royal family's having its games, killing each other. Like, but he's projecting his own stress and anxiety onto the world around him being wrong. And so he thinks the whole English countryside, everyone in England is just heathens, and we're drowning in sin, and only through purification of God would England be brought back to good graces, right? And so that is terrifying. When that is why even though we know it's not accurate, but I do believe in the separation of church and state, and this is why. It's because you get these fanatical leaders in whatever religion it is. Look at the Middle East, right? And it can cause a lot of problems for a lot of innocent people. And this is again another example as to why religion does not need, there needs to be a separation of church and state. All right, for people like him. So in the meantime, while this is happening, King Charles I is on the throne. And in 1629, he dissolved Parliament, and he only brought them back in 1640. Okay, so he dissolved Parliament, which again, this is like a comedy of errors. They're all fucking up. Like, we need a parliament, we need a balance of power. We don't need one absolute ruler that's tyrannical. We also don't need rulers who are going to enforce their religious beliefs on other people, because that turns tyrannical too. So you've got this butting heads of two severely tyrannical people. Listen, y'all. Listen, Linda. Listen, y'all. Like, I don't know if y'all seen that video. Listen, Linda.
Karen. Linda, yeah.
Listen, Linda. Like, I feel so sorry I might have had some relatives in England at this time, but I feel so sorry. Like, I just feel sorry for the people of the country, like in all the countries and all of them. all of them, all y'all, France, Spain, Germany, like the people of the countries, we've learned the people aren't the problem. The people are just milking their cows and trying to live their lives. You know, it's the freaking aristocrats and the royals that have too much power, are too much boredom, that are causing these issues for everyone. It's like one bad apple spoils the whole point, the whole bunch. So I want to just make that clear. Same as in France with Henry IV and Catherine and all that mess. It's not the people at all. We know that it is not the people. It is these aristocrats that are just battling for power that are causing this. Okay, so Cromwell, when Charles I brought the Parliament back in 1640. Cromwell, and I laughed, I wrote in my notes, the God Squad. Have you guys heard of the God Squad? Like, that's like a modern phrase of people who are super religious that just shove their religion down your throat, like fundamentalists. And when I was reading about when Cromwell came back, he and these other men basically formed like a God Squad, where they were just like tisking everyone for being sinners and tisking because you're all just a bunch of heathen sinners that need to be saved by these Puritan beliefs, and God loves us and not you. I mean, everyone's weaponizing God. And this is the one thing that drives me crazy about religion is they weaponize God. They use God as a weapon against you. And that is not fair for anyone, for any religion. God is not a weapon, right? God loves everyone equally, but that's what he's doing. He's just the biggest nerd in Parliament. That's like, you know, just the annoying person that's like really saying that the problem, he's like, no, the problem is not dissolving Parliament. The problem is not this. The problem is not that. The problem is that you're all fucking sinners. That is what he's saying. It's crazy. So anyway, England breaks out into a civil war. Parliament against the royalists. So they're trying to dismantle the monarchy. And granted, if you do study, I'm not going to get too deep into the military stuff that was going on at this time. Again, you guys can study that if you're interested in military history. Charles I did kind of like do things to get his fate. Like he could have handled it better. Like he really could have handled this better. He could have handled it so he didn't get his head chopped off. But I think he was so royal that he didn't expect. Like, I don't think he thought he was going to ever have to be accountable to anyone because he's the royal bloodline. He believes in that stuff. Like that no one can touch me. I'm untouchable, right? His dad was the King James Bible dude, you know, like his dad was the one that was quoted as saying that the monarchy is not human, but born of royal blood. Like they are not human. They are above human. That's what the person who wrote your Bible said, that the royalty has an upper hand to all people. This is who we're talking about, his son. So he grew up with this idea that he was untouchable. So in some ways, his naivety kind of makes me feel a little bit sorry for him, but we know they're all screwed up, so I don't feel that sorry for him. So 1642, conflict between Parliament and Charles. Orange battle broke out. This led to the execution of Charles I. 59 people, including Cromwell, signed his death warrant. That is important. Remember that the people who this has to do with his head being traveled around England was the people who signed the signing of the death warrant. Those are who, just remember that, 59 people, including Cromwell. So Charles I was executed on the 30th of January 1649 by beheading. He was found guilty of treason by attempting, and I quote, this is what it said, to uphold in himself an unlimited and tyrannical power to rule according to his will and overthrow the rights and liberties of the people. Now, I wanted to actually read you guys verbatim what he was charged with, why he got executed, because everything he was charged with is what Oliver Cromwell becomes. Keep that in mind. So let me read that again. Uphold in himself an unlimited and tyrannical power to rule according to his will and overthrow the rights and liberties of the people. So this is what Oliver Cromwell and the 58 other men charged him with, and this is what Oliver Cromwell also becomes. Okay, so now, interesting thing about, I think I sent you a very famous painting, Morné, of the execution of Charles I, the side. Now, Charles I, there is a very strange cult that exists, and I've been trying to find more information on this cult that believe they've sainted Charles I because when some of his blood fell when his head was chopped off, kind of the same thing we spoke about last week with Louis XVI, blood identifying from his beheading, identifying Henry IV as that being Henry IV's skull. But there was a cult. There was people that wiped up some of the Charles I blood, and miracles apparently allegedly started happening around these handkerchiefs. And so there is actually a cult, and I think it's a very underground cult to this day that venerates these old handkerchiefs listen, if you think you're weird, just research history and you're gonna be like, oh no, I'm so normal, it's not even funny. The fact that there's still an underground cult around a beheading of a guy and listen, like Scientology isn't even that weird. It's just like what? And I've tried to research this, and I think they do still exist, but there's so little information. They're so secretive. So if anybody has actually, I'm going to put this shout out. If anybody has any more information on this cult, please send it to me or Chantelle or Morné, because I have a feeling there is more to this cult than we know.
Yeah.
You know? And that's why it's so secretive. Okay. So that's just an interesting side note there. So, in his last word, Charles the First declared himself as a martyr of the people. No one's a martyr of the people in these stories. They're a martyr to themselves. The people are just trying to live their damn lives. They're just trying to milk those cows.
Please, martyr to the people. It's not. No, I won't even comment.
We still, another interesting trivia about this execution of Charles I was we still have no idea who the executioner was.
I'm just checking the comment here. What Paul's saying, I'm just going to add it here. It's so true, though. It seems they're usually untouchable on earth. Check the Bidens, Clintons, Bushes, Rockefellers, etc. It's the same bloody thing. And I'm telling you, I bet if we had to go and research these bloodlines, let's just look at the bloodlines. You're all going to find that these Bidens, Clintons, Bushes, Rockefellers, Rothschilds, it's all the same thing.
Yeah, it's all the same thing. And they're all still the families to this day. Like, they're all still the same families, right? Like, and I want to make this clear. That doesn't mean that we know that there are good people born into these families. I want to be very clear about that. Just because somebody has the last name Rockefeller or somebody has the last name Rothschild or Bourbon or whatever, or Valois, or Windsor, it doesn't mean everybody is accountable for his or her own self, right? And we look at people like Jesse or Caleb, all these people that are whistleblowers that, thank God that there are good people that are born into these families. I feel sorry for them, but thank God, because that's how we know what we know, because they have a soul and they know it's not right. Right. And they know, and they start whistleblowing to tell us all. So I just want to be very clear about that. Just because I really want us moving forward to not be so vigilante and let people speak for themselves. It doesn't, just like you can't help who you were born to, doesn't mean they could either. And so, but yeah, we do know there was some shady stuff going on. So anyway, at that point,
entitlement.
Yes, absolutely entitlement. That not realizing that justice can be fought. But that's what they say about narcissists, right? And psychopaths. They never know when they've crossed the line. They never believe that they were actually, that's why the cabal is never going to surrender, because they literally think that they can still keep going. They have no comprehension of them.
And let's never forget, when we're looking at this as well, we're looking at the controllers at the moment, we always say they treat us, or they think we're cattle. It's not cattle. Cattle are useful.
Yeah.
They treat us as if we're vermin.
Yeah.
Right. And that's really, when you speak to anyone who's been in the system and part of the controlling system, they will tell you they see us humans as vermin. And it's exactly that. Since, like, the martyr for the people, what a lot of crap. Yeah. It's literally using the people for their own nefarious agenda to enrich themselves, to become slaves, to be there so that they can control and wield their power. It's as simple as that. Really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's not, So after that, Cromwell became Lord Protector and made the state church Presbyterian. So did you guys hear what I said? He made the state church Presbyterian. What's the whole thing about the Presbyterian church? The state's not involved. So we see him now contradicting himself when he's got all this power. He was basically treated as a king. He even had a coronation. He just didn't put the crown on. So he was basically a king himself at this point. He became what he said he wasn't. The Commonwealth of England was established in 1648, making it like a republic. Cromwell removed all holidays. So at this point, no one could have any holidays. No Christmas, no Easter, nothing.
Which is probably a good thing when we're looking at all these dodgy holidays, right? And what they actually represent.
Well, they closed down a pub. He closed down pubs.
Okay, well that's probably also a good thing.
Let's just say there was no fun in any of these peasants' lives. Like no fun. He took everything away. Like if it was today, they would take away. I mean, it just literally he stripped the people of their rights. Like even if that would be true. That would be true. And really, again, just controlling. Yes. Controlling and which is so sucky. Really, it's so sucky. So even if they were caught, celebrating Christmas, they were then arrested for breaking a law. So they literally stripped everybody in England of every single human. And these people, like these poor peasants, like I said, like they had hard lives back then. I mean, I don't know if they knew they had hard lives. Like us looking back, they had no fun whatsoever. Like it was awful. School reunions with no drinking.
That's Alice. That's what, well, this is the one that you all know went to my school reunion a few weeks ago. Alice was there, right there.
Listen,
she doesn't drink. I'll have you know. Alice does not drink, so don't you come with your drinking story, Alice.
Alice was Oliver Cromwell's favorite. Like she would have been like the number 1 girl of the group for Oliver Cromwell.
Yes, Alice.
I, on the other hand, probably would have been sitting in jails as witches. So
exactly.
The way I see it, we know a lot of these holidays were created for various purposes. The people typically aren't. They're using I love Christmas. I love Thanksgiving. I love being able to see my friends and family and have a joy. We're not doing anything bad. Like it's when there's love, when there's laughter, God is present, right? And so the fact that he just stripped everyone of this of any type of life, it was like an enslavement. They were more enslaved. Listen, and so towards the end of his reign, we'll say, the people actually wanted to bring the royal family back. That's how bad it got under Oliver Cromwell. They were like, please bring the cabal back. Like they're like, we don't want to do it. Was so bad that the people were like, let's go back to those weirdos who wear wigs. Like we want our pubs back. And we also think about that with industry as well. We look what happened to lockdown. Like people lose their businesses. All of a sudden people start suffering because the pub owners can't make money anymore, right? It affects the economy. And the American colonists were like, we dodged a bullet with that one. Oliver Cromwell. So, all right. So Cromwell had sole unrestricted power and he ruled with an iron fist. So again, think about what Charles I was charged with. Charles I was a pansy compared to Oliver Cromwell and what happened with him. He was even called His Royal Highness, even though he was not technically a king. And he kept a court. He lived at the palaces with servants. Although he declined the crown, he was basically the new king. So when he died, he was 59 years old. He was not killed. They believe he died of malaria. He rejected the medicine because it was manufactured by the Catholic Church. That's why you think he's a little crazy at this point. It's gotten to his head. So his funeral was a great stately affair. He was laid to rest at Westminster Abbey. Cromwell, like a king, left the country to his son, Richard. So I'm like laughing because it's just, this is the pot calling the kettle black, right? Like it's no different from the Stuarts. But because Richard had not earned the power on his own.
Sorry, I want to just warn you guys. I've got load shedding and I've got like 10 minutes left on my laptop.
Cool. I'll get through it quickly.
So if I kick off.
Okay, cool.
That's fine. It just if I get kicked off, of course, Cromwell has not come to abduct me. That's what I'm trying to say. If I disappear in 10 minutes.
But if we all 3 of us disappear, guys, we hit a nerve with these missing body parts with the royal family. They're like, well, shit, those 3 weirdos on YouTube figured out our plans. And so anyway. But just so you guys know, Oliver Cromwell was not beheaded in life. He died of natural causes. So how did his head end up on a stake? We're going to get to that. He left he left the country of England like a king to his son Richard. But Parliament then dissolved Richard's power because Richard hadn't earned the Lord Protector title, which, Richard was probably like, whew. I don't think Richard actually wanted it, to be honest with you, reading this. And I think Richard really, really dodged the bullet with that, because Richard was left alone by Charles II when he comes back. Richard was not held accountable. I think so. He really dodged the bullet. You can't help it if somebody puts you in your will. So at least I think there was some understanding when the royal family was brought back with Richard, where they kind of just let him live. Right. Okay. So after that, a man named George Monk took over and got Charles II out of exile to return as king. So Charles I's family was then exiled to France. And they were and then Charles II was brought back as the king because Oliver Cromwell sucked. And the people were like, no, we're not doing this anymore. This is no fun. We're bringing the king back. So now this is where it gets real juicy. This is when it gets real petty. King Charles II was a bit of a petty Betty, and we're here for it. We're totally here for it, because he took his pettiness and his piss-offery to the limits. This guy came back to the throne mad as hell. And you know what? I might be pretty mad too. Like, cabal aside, controllers aside, you beheaded his dad. Like, and you destroyed the economy of his country. I would be a little pissy too. So he comes back and he demands. So the first thing he does, well, he restores Christmas, he restores Easter, he reopens the pub. So the people are happy, right? Then he was like, all right, we got you all drunk and happy. Let's have some fun. We're going to take retribution out on these fuckers who signed the 59 people who signed my dad's death warrant. So the people who were still alive all had to stand trial. Some of them were executed. Some of them served a life in prison. But there were like 3 or 4 dudes who were already dead, including Oliver Cromwell. So this is what I'm saying. Like, Charles II is many, many things, but fair and Gentile isn't one of them. He is the biggest. Charles II, that Shakespearean line, held hath no fury like a woman scorned. There's an even greater fury, and that's Charles II. And he is the biggest petty Betty you will ever meet in his life. He had Oliver Cromwell's body and the 2 other bodies, dudes, dug up. They had to be dug up. And their bodies were hanged, dead. So they had to post-mortem execution. So on January of 1661, to the date of his father's execution, he ordered the disinterment of Oliver's body, as well as 2 other men who had passed for a post-mortem execution at Tyburn for regicide. All right. I remind you. Oh, thanks. I actually thought about majoring in history when I
would agree. I would absolutely agree, Brice. I couldn't imagine more
fun, you guys.
I think you missed your calling, Brice. I think you missed your maybe it's still there. I really think you'd be the funnest professor on the planet.
Dates and like old dudes, but y'all, they were just as petty as we were. And I'm here for it. Like, I am here for it. Like, this is the juiciest shit. This is better than Days of Our Lives. This is better than any soap opera. Like, can you imagine? Like, can you imagine being like, we're going to dig these bodies up. We're going to re-execute them. So, I mean, who's got that kind of time? First of all, this is why, they didn't have TV to distract them. So they created their own drama, right? So can you imagine the smell, you guys? Like, let's just set the scene. They dig up these guys who have been dead for a while. So we know dead bodies. I mean, let's face it. A rose by any other name would smell as sweet. Dead people, we're all going to go out smelling like shit, basically, because the body starts to decompose.
Like rot.
Like rot. Like, if you've ever smelled just a dead animal in the wild and then you magnify that with a human, like, oh my God. And I'm sure London at that point didn't smell that great anyway, because, it was London. Most cities do still have a smell to them anyway. And so they hang these 3 dead bodies from morning until 4 in the afternoon. So these dead, rotting bodies. I mean, could you imagine? Like, talk about Halloween costumes. Like, talk about the horror, the traumatized children. like skip to looing off to school every day, seeing these horrific bodies just hanging from the scaffolding that smell like, you know, they're already decomposing, they smell. That's where ancestral lineage. So if you're traumatized, it might be that you carry the ancestral lineage from one of those kids that saw that and has been traumatized ever since. So they were cut down and then beheaded. Their heads were placed on 20-foot poles on the roof of Westminster Abbey. The other two were eventually taken down, but Oliver Cromwell's head stayed up there until 1648 for 23 years.
Oh my God.
I'm saying nobody, Charles II gets the Petty Award. I don't know anybody as petty as this man to leave the rotting head up for 23 years on Westminster Abbey. And no one took it down, you guys. It came down because it blew off. There was
in a storm.
It was a dark and stormy night.
Eventually, Horus, God of the sky, decided enough already.
Can you imagine, though? Let's set the scene again. You're walking down the dark streets of London. You've worked a long, hard day in the factories. It's a stormy night. You need to go home. And then all of a sudden, you get whacked by Oliver Cromwell's head on a spike. It didn't come off the spike, you guys. Like, Morné, if you want to show the picture again, like, it was still on the spike. Like, it went down with the spike. No, like, can you imagine? You would need therapy for the rest of your life, or you're just walking down, minding your own business, and it falls at your feet. Oliver Cromwell, his head. All right, and this was in 1864. Now, just a side note, what happened to his body? The head of Oliver Cromwell are the only remains that we have to this day. There are two theories with the head, with the body. People believe that the body, the most common theory is that it was hacked up and just like thrown into the river. All right. But some people believe that his daughters collected his body and put it in a vault in their family home. We know where the vault is. Like, this exists. This vault exists. But the descendants of the Cromwells still will not allow anybody to open the vault.
Well, I mean, I'm like not surprised. You never know what you could bloody well be finding in there, right?
Like, what could, I mean, so it's curious that they won't let anybody open the vault. Also, like, is his like Grandpapa Oliver's like bones in there? Like, I don't know if it's for their own self-preservation that they won't let the country open the vault, or if there's something they're hiding. I mean, I think it might be.
Well, apparently they know what's in the vault, which is why they won't let anyone open it, right? Because there's no one that, you know, I mean, why wouldn't you want anyone to open the vault? You've got to know what's in there. Let's just be logical here. So clearly it's safe to assume a lot of dodginess has occurred. Yeah, and the question is just what? We just got to figure out what the dodginess is.
I mean, like I said, you think your family's got some family drama? You ain't seen nothing unless you start studying history. There are some wackadoo people in our history line. And listen, if you are a descendant of the Cromwells, I apologize for saying this. I can understand. You probably have some fear. And Lord have mercy, those are some weirdo genes you got. And I'm so sorry. But this is some wackadoo shit. Like, just open it, you know, like why won't, you know, it's like why won't the Bourbons give their DNA to test Oliver, to test Henry IV's head? Like, what the hell are you hiding? Anyway, but so they think now we've got to start guessing about what happened to Oliver's head. We do have some idea. We believe that a soldier actually took the head home as a souvenir. Legit. A soldier was outside, the head fell down. He put it in his bag. Could you imagine if your husband, wives, I'm talking to you. What would you do if your hubby, your baby daddy, came home and like, look, I got us something. Like,
I got a trinket for our new home at the beach.
Like, where are we gonna put this? Like, so the soldier got home, and I'm laughing because I wish someone would make a movie about this because it is kind of funny. The soldier got home with the head. Well, the minute the guards noticed the head was missing, there was an all-out, like, it was like hide and go seek. They were out to find this head. and anybody caught with the head would have been arrested because they were afraid that when they realized the head was missing, there was a massive search. If any Cromwell supporters were found to have the head, they would have been executed. So the woman, the wife, was probably like, what kind of crap have you gotten us into? So the head was hidden in a chimney for many, many years. They shoved that shit up.
Bring the whole new meaning to the word smoking.
Smoking, yeah. I mean, if your husband did that, you would have hit shit over his head. But ladies, you could get him to buy you all the designer bags you wanted because you'd be like, I have something. You brought that thing home. I could easily just, anyway. So in 1710 now, so now let's back up to 1710. His head appears at an exposition. At some point, the wife was probably, because let's face it was probably the wife that was like, all right, you got us into this situation. We're going to make some money from it. So they sold it to a Swiss collector of odds and curiosities called Dupuy, D-U-P-U-Y. Now this, I don't know if you guys have a Ripley's Believe It or Not. We have a museum chain here in the United States called Ripley's Believe It or Not. And it's a museum chain full of like weird shit, like two-headed cows, like all sorts of stuff. I used to go all the time. Whenever I would go to South Carolina, to the Low Country, and I would spend my summers there with my cousins, one of my uncles, it's kind of like rednecky to like go to these things because it's such a weird museum. But one of my uncles would always take my cousin and Sarah me one time every summers to Ripley's. And I loved it. It was my favorite thing to do. Can you guys see? I've always been this weirdo. Like, it was very macabre, of all these oddities from around the world. So this Dupuy guy reminds me of Ripley's Believe It or Not. So he had this huge traveling exhibition, and Oliver Cromwell's head was one of his. People had to pay money to see it. All right. So after Dupuy's death, the head was passed around, and legend is that it had lived at a pub for a while where drinking games were played. So, kid you not, you thought
places.
People would just laugh. Drinking games. You see, I'm telling you, Grandma and Grandpa are way more interesting than you think they are. These people of yore, these people of yesteryear in the late 1700s and into the 1800s were literally playing beer pong with Oliver Cromwell's head. Honestly, I mean, y'all.
Well, was that for a comeuppance? He wanted to take their fun away, so they were seriously going to make hay while the sun shines, right?
Did half of the people even know who this was? Or were they just like, drunk and like, hee, we can play beer pong. And it's like a prop, right? Because it's on that stick. It's still on the stick. It's probably molded to the stick at this point. So it's like bopping around these pups. Okay. I am just like, talk about karma. Like, this is why I think God has a sense of humor. Like, this is what happened to him, his head, right? So anyway, it ended up on the 25th of March, 1960. So 1960, guys, this is within our, this was, some of people were alive when this happened, right? At Sydney Sussex College, which is the college that Oliver Cromwell was going to before his father died and he had to quit, they interned the head. They finally took the head from the pub and were like, we got to bury this shit. Like, this is not okay. So they interred the head in a secret ceremony on the 25th of March, 1960 at Sydney Sussex College. We have no idea where it's buried. They did not tell anybody where. There is a plaque at the college that says that the head is buried, interned on the college campus, but that to me is quite shady as well. Like, that they did it in a secret ceremony where they buried it. It could be innocent. It could be completely innocent where they were like, this nonsense has to stop. Let's just bury the head, not telling you. Because of course, like, the head already has a reputation. It's already been in a museum of oddities. It's already been hanging out in all these pubs and had beer spilt all over it. Like, somebody from digging it up. A drunk college kid would do that, wouldn't they? Be like, I know what's fun. let's go dig up his head, so anyway, so that, my friends, is the story of Oliver Cromwell's head. So, and yes, I appreciate the history professor comment, because y'all, this is why my job is so fun, because this shit is so cool.
Okay, well, I seriously think that your calling is actually to go and teach this stuff at the local Life University there. My son was at Life University there in is it Georgia, right?
Yeah,
so I think they could certainly do with a professor like you there, because he certainly didn't mention fun professors when he was studying in Atlanta.
I think that's why I always tell people, like, when they're storyboarding, like, don't talk about the boring shit. Like, to me, the military stuff's more. What's interesting, like let's talk about Captain Ameche again. Like I said, like, what? She put cow poo in her vagina? Like, that's what makes history entertaining. It's not the dates of the wars. It's who these people were. Like, I mean, like, these were human beings that were just as messed up, just as wackadoo, just as weird as we are. And if not
a whole lot weirder, apparently, like a whole lot weirder. Wow.
Right. I'm boring compared to them. We're all boring compared to them. They had some really crazy lives, and I would love it. Like, if you guys, anybody watching from us is from the UK, and if your grandpappy or grandmama, Mima, whatever, has some stories of a skull and a bob, I would love to hear about it.
Let us know, right? Let us know. Well, listen, my laptop is about 2 seconds away from dying a very unglamorous death. But so if I happen to cut out,
as you're saying this, you gotta call this series not the missing, but the glamorous deaths of the rich and famous. You know how they used to have, like, the lifestyle. We should the glamorous deaths of the rich and famous, with all their body parts freaking missing.
But I think we should call our series. I think we should call the series that the glamorous deaths of our ancestors. That's for sure. Well, they certainly kept us entertained. I mean, I wonder what Oliver Cromwell's ghost is thinking right now, seeing them playing beer pong in his head. I mean, that's like hilarious, right? That's hilarious. I mean, and especially when he. Yeah, exactly.
People's rights to have fun and make their own choices. They're gonna play beer pong on your head after you die. Like, that's just cause and effect. Like, that's just karma.
Exactly. I was gonna say, there's karma biting you in the ass, or biting you on the head right there.
Yep.
Okay. Well, as much as what I'd love to carry on, guys, I'm gonna bid you farewell. I'm teaching my first beginner yoga online group in an hour from now. It's the first time I'm doing it on Zoom, so I'm super excited, and I'm going to go and glam myself up for that. make sure that my laptop is working by 6:30. It's coming on half an hour, hopefully, and then I shall catch you guys tomorrow. I have Alice Parola tomorrow at 4 p.m. my time. And then we have double Jessie this week. And then, of course, Brice. We have back with Brice on Wednesday, doing the final chapter of the Sophia Code. We'll be finishing off the Sophia Code this week. And you're not here next week. So then we're going to start going on to all sorts of other Wellness Wednesday things. Looking forward to the
holiday here, so I can't. It's going to be crazy here for me. I won't listen. My family. I was telling Morné off camera. If my family heard me talking about missing penises and body parts on camera, they would probably stage an intervention. So
we'll consider this an intervention.
So we'll be back next week. I'm actually the next celebrity who's got a missing body. We're going to talk about in 2 weeks' time. That's more closer to our timeline, kind of like Matahari is closer. This guy's gonna be all y'all, as we say down here in South, all y'all are gonna know who this person is. So
looking forward to that, honey. Looking forward to that. Okay, well, you beautiful people, thank you so much for joining us. Alice, special thank you to you. And by the way, Alice, we're going to be doing stuff. You, me, Karen Gray, Corin Momberg, the Rebels. We're going to be doing a Soulful Sunday. I'm going to introduce you girls to the world. These are my mates from school who kept me sane. And we're still friends. So it's awesome. Okay, guys. Look forward to seeing you very, very soon. God bless you all. Mwah. Kisses from Africa, South Africa. The wind is blowing, crazy weather here at the moment. Take care of yourselves until we see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.